All right, a couple of agenda changes. So there was a plan for the select board to join us tonight, which I think would have been a very helpful thing. Unfortunately, somebody dropped the ball on their end and they didn't have it on their agenda. Um,
Mm.
and so I think rather than do a last second change to their agenda. Rita is going to be joining us kind of independently when their meeting wraps up. And um, the context for that, by the way, is I think there are a couple things. One is there's a specific request that they've made to increase the legal line, another 10,000. We'll get into this. And so that since that was really coming from them, I thought it'd be helpful to have the select board explain that. So anyway, Rita's going to join us so she can do that. And then
Okay.
the other sort of context was like I think it's been such a crazy year for the select board, and they've just had their hands full with so many things, and I think they're feeling like all of a sudden they feel like they've been a little bit out of the loop on the budget, and not in a way that like assigning blame or anything like that, but it just a kind of a sense that they sort of haven't been like totally aware of some of the challenges that we've been dealing with, and I think we're interested in kind of getting up to speed on it. So that was the plan, unfortunately, like I said, but we'll have Rita. Rita did spend a bunch of time looking at our budget that George sent around. So I think she spent quite a bit of time going through it. So I think she's feeling like she understands it now. But anyway,
Hey,
so that yeah, go ahead, George.
quick question. Is the select board meeting tonight?
They are. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's why Haley's not here. Is Haley going to show up with Rita?
I think so. And Rita was, I guess you never know, but she was sort of estimating that they might be done around 6:45 or so.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll see both of them at that point. Okay, and then the other kind of special guest tonight is Ryan is going to be joining us, I think, on the earlier side. Um, let's see. Uh, And the context for that was, I think there was a discussion about PFAS interest and whether our PFAS loans would include an interest expense for this year. And so anyway, there's I think a discussion we need to have with him about that. I don't think he was initially aware that those were interest-free loans, and anyway, it's a complicated situation. So he's going to join us, and we'll talk about that issue. Why don't we start with looking at minutes? And so we have April 8th minutes. Jim.
Yeah, so George, uh, in the members present, right at the top, you've
Yes.
got me down. You got Kathy and both of us down as Jim, Kathy, Salvador, Hemingway.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Sort of, and
Yeah, I pasted Kathy because she was absent the previous one. Obviously not in the right spot. Got it.
I think
Didn't
it
you
was a
hear the
copy and
news
paste.
about me and Jim? You guys
Well,
didn't hear about that?
I fixed the problem, okay?
Oh, good. Okay, that's great.
All right. Any other questions for George or suggestions for changes?
Hello?
Yep. I think people might just be looking through
Oh,
them here.
okay. .
All right. I don't see any hands. They look good to me. So I will make a motion to approve the minutes. I guess as
Second.
amended, we made one small change.
Second,
Oh, and I say,
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, I.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, I.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, I.
Right. All right. I'm gonna shoot Ryan a quick email. Uh, oh, I'm sorry. Ryan's coming later at 7:30. That's right, because I thought we were doing the select board first. So we'll see him later. Let me, I guess what we can do now is just talk about some kind of budget updates since our last meeting. And I have a brand new one that's actually not on George's current budget that I might as well get into now. I spoke with Kristen this morning about the police department's budget. And had asked her for another conversation because I was sort of still feeling like we didn't have this totally nailed down, at least to my satisfaction. And I was feeling like I was kind of leaning towards asking for some kind of a compromise proposal for FY26 so that we kind of wouldn't experience the full impact of this proposed staffing change. And I just wanted to sort of talk through some of those items with her. It turns out she's, I think, been sort of independent of that, has been feeling like she needed to make a change in her proposal because of the kind of larger context of a really challenging budget year, seeing how the police department was kind of appearing to be somewhat of an outlier in terms of looking at I think, 30+% increase over FY25 when most other departments were in the kind of mid-single digit increases. And I think she was sort of feeling like this might actually be a difficult year for her to get buy-in for that proposal. So she volunteered to kind of to postpone implementation of that staffing change. So not hiring an additional full-time officer until FY27 and kind of continuing with the status quo and like really sort of spending this year like kind of pulling together sort of the information, doing some additional research to kind of help make the case kind of, like an effective case for doing this change in FY27. And so then I suggested, well, we could increase the police wages line by 10%, as opposed to, I think it was 34.4% in the draft budget, which I think is, if I understand this correctly, and this was aligned with her thinking too, that was the percentage increase that the contract for the officer's contract required for this year. And so she seemed very comfortable doing that. And actually, I didn't even really ask her to do. I mean, I was sort of heading in some kind of a direction of like making a proposal, something along those lines, but she had sort of really kind of independently made that. So I think if we do that, we recover about 33 $1,000 and change from in the budget by reducing that police wages line. We still don't have a number for her contract, which I think is still in a kind of long protracted negotiation right now. And one of the things she asked me, and we should have a sort of plan for this, is what happens if there isn't an agreement on her contract before annual town meeting. What would we put in the budget? I didn't know the answer to that because I don't recall that happening, at least in my years on the FinCom. But I thought there were sort of, I said, this is just me thinking off the top of my head, there were sort of two options. One was just to sort of find out what the last, the kind of the last offers on sort of both sides of that negotiation are as of our budget deadline, and that we could put in either the highest of those two values as a placeholder, or an average of the two, and with kind of an assumption that maybe they'll ultimately land somewhere in between those two. But I guess we don't have to necessarily figure that out right now, but that is something that seems like it might be a possibility. Bob.
Yeah, just a notion here that I think in normal cases and it's often the case that, say, a teachers union does not finish this negotiation in a given year, and the town meeting comes along and the budget has to be nailed down. I think in the past, I've seen communities do this, just use the old contract for the pay scale and then pay whenever the contract is resolved, pay back the employees whatever they're due under the new contract retroactive to the beginning of the fiscal year. So that's one way that these kinds of things are handled. And that would require, a special town meeting or whatever to provide those monies
Right.
to the budget retroactively. So that's one way of dealing with it.
Got it. Okay. April?
What did we do last year around Becky's? Because her contract was also up in the air, and I don't
Yeah,
remember.
I don't either.
Yeah, I remember.
George,
George,
Yeah, I
would
do remember. Becky basically told the select board and the finance committee that she wasn't asking for a pay increase, and that because Becky was always a proponent of managers getting the same increases as the non-union employees, the rank and file, if you will. So Becky, and she specifically stated that I'm not asking for more money. That wasn't the sticky point on her negotiation. So we were able to just increase it by 3.32.
I see.
Okay.
We have 95,000 in there now for the chief, which is a 30-something% increase. 32%, I think. I have to go back and look.
Yeah. 31.8. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah, I just want to say, I did ask, when I met with Kristen before our last meeting, I did ask her to do something like this, and she was aware that we were having problems with our budget from our meeting with her and also from my meeting with her. And she did show a willingness to think about it. And frankly, I still am not sure that that budget that she proposed, that we're now going to probably see changed, was level services. It was more hours per week than what we had been used to paying historically. So that's another issue that has to be looked at by us.
Yeah. I agree, but I think it's now become an issue for FY27 and not for 26, given this, sort of her current thinking about the budget. I'll just say from my end, I was really super appreciative of her offer to do this. I think it really demonstrated to me like an understanding of the kind of challenges that we're dealing with this year, and kind of a willingness to not it's not like, I suppose she could have dug her heels in the ground. I mean, this is obvious. This is the path that she, thinks is the best path forward for the department. So, and for the town. And, I think she probably could have chosen to sort of dig her heels in and continue to advocate for it, but she sort of listened to to the concerns, and I was just really appreciative of her kind of flexibility and willingness to sort of hold off for a year on that.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
So I would propose at some point when we pull up the budget later in this meeting, George, if we should go ahead and make that change. And
I already
just
did.
okay, great. And I think it's just increasing the police wages line by exactly 10%. I think we'll
Right, that picked up 33,000, 33,443, and our deficit moves to 110,290.
great.
Yeah,
All
just
right.
one last thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Kathy will also back me up here. We did provide 10% exactly to the wage line for the hired hands at the police department. That was
Okay, so that's the correct number. Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, good. All right. I see Ryan has joined us, so maybe we can get into the PFAS loan topic. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for joining. So George, I'm gonna kind of lean on you if you don't mind, since you're kind of
Sure.
been
Yeah, well, I
involved in
talked to
thinking
Haley
about
about it.
this.
So, yeah, Haley had updated me.
Yeah. Can you tee it up then for everybody?
Yes. So Ryan, I just want to finish the minutes here. So we all know that there's an interest-free loan coming from Clean Water Action, I believe, well, Clean Water Trust. And Ryan, I guess you're aware it's two bands at 150,000 each, and they haven't been distributed to us yet. So you're thinking, and let me know if I'm off base, but you're thinking, well, we need to borrow 300,000 because that's what we need. And so you sent us your debt service schedule for FY26, and of course I noticed that those interest charges are on there because that's not interest free, that those initial amounts, they're just in anticipation of reimbursement from the Clean Water Trust. Am I doing all right so far?
Yes, because we have to borrow in advance, we have to pay the banks that we're borrowing from advance interest.
So,
and so then that interest expense, if we were to do that, would then be reimbursable at a later date, or no?
No, the interest
No.
expense is a town expense that the town has to
Got it.
budget for.
Okay.
essentially going to our regular borrower to get that money for a short-term note.
I see.
Yes.
So
Okay.
the thing I wanted to point out, a couple questions for you, Ryan. I'm not sure. I talked to Haley about this. I hope she passed these along. You know, we see that there's an account that started the year. It's PFAS mitigation, and it started with about, I actually have it on another screen here. It started the year at about $164,000, and so far 75 has been expended. So there's 88,716 sitting in that account. And the finance committee has also, I don't know if we're sponsoring it, but there is also a warrant article at town meeting that is going to transfer from our cash reserves to this PFAS contamination count another $50,000. So essentially, at this point in time, we're looking at about 138,000, 88 in whatever minus whatever gets us to the end of the fiscal year, and then a replenishment of 50,000. So the question, I guess, is, do we really need to borrow that 300,000? Can we determine if we need to borrow it, make an estimate, and possibly not borrow anything, or borrow something much lower than the 300,000?
To be honest, I don't have a clue what that line in the budget is that for PFAS. I have no clue why it's in there or what it's for or how it possibly relates to the project. Sorry if you can hear my dogs in the background. If not, pretend I didn't say anything. I have no idea what it's for, to be totally transparent with you. I know that if we do not borrow this money, we will have a $300,000 hit on our free cash. And that's why we need to borrow it.
Well, why would we have a $300,000 hit in free cash?
That is a question for your accountant. I don't participate in the calculation of free cash, but the town took a $150,000 hit on free cash last year because we didn't borrow, and this year we'll take the full $300,000 hit if we don't borrow for it.
Or another
So that's
150.
why. It's complicated. As far as I don't. Reality is Becky's your project manager. I'm not your project manager. I don't know the details of the project. It's just not. I just borrow the money as town meeting tells me to. But Becky was the project manager. Gabe came in and tried to be the temporary project manager, and now Haley's in here and is the project manager. I don't know the level of knowledge that got passed from Becky to Gabe, that got passed from Gabe to Haley. I think there's some confusion as to whether the Clean Water Trust even has approved us for that second 150,000 or not. If the Clean Water Trust doesn't approve us for that second 150, I cannot borrow that second 150, and we'll take $150,000 hit on free cash no matter what. So right now the options are we'll take the $300,000 hit, or we're going to take the $150,000 hit. Excuse me. I'm hoping that the Clean Water Trust and Haley get it so that we don't take a hit at all. But that's kind of where we're at with those right now. No matter what, I'm borrowing 150,000 of it. I believe it's what are we in April? Next month. But I still don't have approval. Bond council doesn't have approval to borrow that second 150. I've sent a list of requirements to our town clerk and Haley that bond council is asking for in order to get approval to borrow that second 150. I'm still waiting for just some of those. I've received some of the requirements, but I'm still waiting on some of them.
All right. Yeah,
Well,
I know it's
I'm-
complicated, but I don't understand why.
I think I'm more confused now than I was before.
Yeah, I just don't understand why we would take a hit on free cash.
Susie,
So
you have your hand up.
the town is authorized to borrow that money, and I believe the town has already expended money. So we've expended money, but we don't have it. And the town voted. So we have on our statement of indebtedness $300,000 of outstanding approved authorized debt. So I'm under the impression that is where it hits your free cash. But again, you have to ask an accountant. It's just not the role of the treasurer.
Okay.
I can tell you that the accountant told me today. We are screwed if we are not allowed to borrow the second 150,000. Peak quote.
Okay. Susie.
This is one of those situations where there's lots of people, lots of pieces, and not a solid picture yet. I did go up to talk to Haley today because what I don't understand is, has there been confirmation of what the Clean Water Trust agreed to? And so when I dragged out the it's called a loan questionnaire that was signed, there was one signed on 26/24, something like that date. Becky had filled out the application. So there was a name on that if you have any questions. So when I was up there today, I said to Haley, I think we don't have the confirmation of what the Clean Water Trust has approved, or what if there's anything left to be done. And we do know that there's two pieces that we're talking about. So she was going to try to get that person on the line and talk to them. But it's classic. We have had so much turnover, and it was in a very complicated process. We just don't have the information right now. But I know that I had thought that it was made, that the information went to the treasurer because it was part of the issue around how to pay for the warrant articles that were there. And so there is one piece of paper in that folder that does say this has been approved. And then there's other, I can't tell from this time sequence of if that was the second one or the first one or all that. So I feel like we have to get this information. I think the Clean Water Trust must be part of where the information's got to come from. She made an effort to contact them today. So I don't know that we know what is needed or what has been approved. And I don't know if anybody's talked to Becky. I mean, at this point, it wasn't going to be Gabe, and it's not Haley that knows what this is. I thought maybe Ryan would know because it's been a process. But if not those two people, then I think we should ask Becky, and I think we should talk to the Clean Water Trust people.
Yeah, when I reached out to Haley last week with the list of requirements, in order to accomplish that, she has to communicate with the Clean Water Trust. It's the only way she'll be able to actually satisfy the requirements. So I believe that once she's in communication with them, she will be able to get clarity on the project. I think it's a lot to take on. I'll be transparent. I do think Becky is a huge part of why we're so deep into the woods on this project. I don't know how much help. I like Becky very much. I'm not speaking to her character in any way, shape, or form. I just think this project got away from her, and that's why we are where we are at the moment. Because, like I said, I have approval and bond council's approval to borrow 150. What I'm trying to get now is bond council's approval to borrow the second 150 that was voted at town meeting.
Okay, just a couple of clarifying questions, because I think I think I'm behind some other folks in this meeting in my understanding of what's happening here. So that PFAS mitigation line that we have in our expense budget, like how did that line get funded initially? Like, where did that money come from if it didn't get awarded to us from this Clean Water Trust? Did I understand it correctly that when you said earlier that those awards haven't yet been distributed to the town?
I think there's kind of two questions there. I don't know anything about the expense line in the budget, to be honest. I had no part in it. It just doesn't mean anything to me. I did relay that to Haley. She asked about it last week. I told her I have no clue what it pertains to. The town has not received any money from the Clean Water Trust as of yet. I know for certain that the trust has committed $150,000.
Right.
I don't know if the trust has committed a second $150,000. I just know that the town voted to borrow $150,000 twice from in regards to the Clean Water Trust giving us two sets of $150,000.
Okay, and then the reason why we would take a free cash hit if we don't borrow these funds is because we've been expending money on the promise of getting these awards from the Clean Water Trust, right? Is that the issue? And so we've got essentially, like, we've been incurring expenses. We've got a line in the accountant's expense budget that is capturing that, and it has been assumed that those funds would be paid for from these awards from the Clean Water Trust. Does that sound right to you?
That's my understanding from my quick education from the accountant.
I have a question. When you said that, Ryan, you said that yes, the trust, Clean Water Trust has committed 150,000. What's the mechanism for it to be sent to the town?
I'm assuming eventually they should receive everything that they need from the project manager, and they will send us $150,000. The way I know that they've committed is that bond council gave us approval to borrow it. And a part of bond council's list of requirements is they get information from Clean Water Trust committing to it. So that list is what I'm waiting for now from Haley for the second borrowing.
Got it.
Good. I stepped in here for a sec. I just wanted
Sure, go ahead, Bob.
For clarification, Ryan, maybe you can help me with this. We had a line in our budget for the PFAS account, which I believe, at least I believed, was the funds for which were provided by this loan. And we've been paying contractors out of that line. I mean, where's that money coming from if it's not coming from the loan? We never transferred any money into that line except for this 50,000 that we're proposing now. Maybe if we did transfer it, at some point we counted that $150,000 as resources available for us to address this PFAS issue. And we paid contractors and we paid for poets and all the rest of it. So I'm not clear at how that happened if we didn't receive any funds from the state.
That's where your hit on free cash is coming from. If we were to close the books today,
That's where it
the town
came from.
would take a $210,000 hit on our free cash if today was June 30th.
Yeah. So
Because,
it's getting,
I mean,
so Bob, it sounds
haven't
like it's
borrowed the
been,
money and we haven't received it.
so Bob, it sounds like all of those bills are getting paid from our whatever general account, and it's getting it's getting allocated to that PFAS line, but there's never actually been funds that have been actually transferred into that line. It's all based on the assumption and promise of this award from Clean Water Trust, it
But
sounds
we've
like.
never addressed,
And the assumption that we're going to borrow short term to cover us until those funds are
I
awarded
got
to
that,
us.
but if that's true, then we have to account for that in our free cash spreadsheet, which we haven't done, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, free cash gets certified at the beginning of the year or the end of last year. The free cash balance we're using is what free cash is, adjusted for what was passed at special town meeting in December or January, whenever it was.
Yeah.
But, right, Ryan, that free cash number was already accounting for that 150,000 when it was certified.
Wow.
I'm honestly not sure. That's an
Yeah,
accountant.
that's all right. We
I'm
can't
sorry.
change free cash balances without warrant articles.
Right.
And so if there was a warrant article for PFAS contamination, it was accounted for in there. And that's why there's a beginning balance that's so high
Yeah.
for this account.
So then if this money does come in, where does it go? It goes into general fund, goes into the,
No, there's a PFAS contamination account.
It's going to go into that line.
on the
Go to
expense
that line?
report on page 12.
because that's a hell of a lot of money then. Do we need that much money? That just goes back to your original question.
Yes,
Already
that is
funded.
my original question. Especially because we're putting 50,000 in.
Yeah. Susie?
I know that Gabe spent time as she was ending up her time here, copying invoices and submitting them. Now, I think they're being submitted to maybe for the Clean Water Trust balance. When we talk about what happened, we had a big lag between the end of Becky's time and the turmoil at Becky's ending and the 6 months with Gabe, and she at some point took on copying invoices. I'm not sure if those invoices are outstanding invoices. I don't know what the status of them are, and giving Gabe only 20 hours a week, it's not going to become clear through that process. So I think we're still in a pretty big muddle about what money is owed to contractors and what money has been paid and what money has been approved by Clean Water and what the action at the in the free cash column is. And this is probably way more than Haley can tackle. So I'm not sure how we line up the resources to figure this out, but it does not seem clear to me yet.
George?
I could probably reach out to Becky and ask her if I could have a meeting with her and see if I can fill any of the gaps. It might be good to have Haley there.
Yeah.
I
think that would be super
Susie's
helpful.
right that we have a balance that's around 89,000 now. I can tell you that somebody was at my house last week taking water samples. So I think it's pretty safe to say that we're going to be spending a good chunk of that 89,000 between now and June 30th. So what we might have on hand is 50,000 if it's approved at the town meeting to start the year. The question is that enough? And I agree with Bob. I'd like to go to the original question and ask, it sounds like we need to borrow something temporarily, and the sooner we can get money from Clean Water Trust, Ryan, I assume that we can pay that loan off as soon as we get the money from Clean Water Trust?
Typically, when we go to borrow, you don't have the option to prepay. So you have the loan for 1 full year. So that's where that, what did I budget for interest? Just a little over 7,000. I'm hopeful that that rate's a little high, but basically a little over 7,000 per each 150. So in the end, it'll cost around 15,000 to borrow that money.
well,
Yeah, I think we should I don't
think
think
we
we should
need more
borrow for
information.
50,000. I don't know.
Don't
All
you
right,
think?
can you finish it? I didn't hear what you said there, George. Can you say that one more
I'm
time?
just thinking, you know, it just seems like if we're putting 50,000 in to the fund at the beginning of the year, we can probably borrow something less. So,
Mhm.
if we took 150,000 from free cash, the beginning balance was 163. So there must have been some other source previously, and maybe we did fund that contamination line in a special town meeting or town meeting previously. We're going to add
Sounds
another
vaguely
50.
familiar.
It is.
And you're saying, Ryan, if we don't borrow 150, then we're going to get another 150 in hitting our free cash.
Well, as of today, we're gonna get hit with $210,000. We're in the hole. So if I borrow 150, we're already still in the hole, and we still have quite a few days left of this fiscal year.
We didn't budget for interest this year. Are we going to owe interest this year?
No, because we didn't borrow for it last year,
Yeah.
We didn't. Okay.
which was a mistake. We should have borrowed for it last year. I actually did borrow for it, sent the paperwork to Becky. Becky reached out and said, no, that's a 0% free loan. The money's coming from Clean Water Trust. You need to change that. So I got special permission from Department of Revenue and the bank to change the loan, only for us to not get the money from the Clean Water Trust and then run out of time to borrow the money again.
Wow.
Which is why I don't think reaching out to Becky is going to help us in this process. I don't think she understands the project.
I think the only question I would ask her is, who's your contact? What kind of arrangements have you made with them? What do we need to do? Do you remember what we need to do to get the money from them?
I think that actually goes to Sue Perez because she's the signer on the document. I can show you the folder that has one that says this has been approved, and then the questionnaire that I think must be for the second one. And this woman, Sue Perez, is the one that signed off the first thing we have. And the other piece was Haley checked in with Jeffrey Arps, but it's actually Jeffrey Faulkner, who seems to be part of the contact people. So Sue Perez and Jeffrey Faulkner are the people. And actually, I think at this point, really, we have to talk to the clean water people. And if there's steps that haven't been taken, we've had a lot of change in our administration, and we need their good graces to keep moving forward.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
I just want to say, I think my impression from what you've said, Ryan, is that we've been paying for this out of free cash. You say we've taken a hit out of free cash. Well, the free cash has been adjusted according to what I understand from what George said. When the disbursements were made on that line, it was coming out of cash. So we've already sort of lent this line money from our free cash, from our reserves, and we are going to get repaid presumably for the first $150,000 that we covered, and possibly the second 150. So why can't we continue to do it that way instead of paying $15,000 of interest for a line which we're not sure we really need to borrow? Why can't we continue to borrow from our own reserves if we can handle it within our concept of our reserve levels, and we're sure that this, and we find out, we establish we're going to get this money from the state, and we establish some kind of a timeline. I don't see why we should borrow money at all. Why don't we just use our reserves and dip into them and then replenish them when the money comes through?
You would have to talk to the accountant on that. I don't understand the legalities behind it. I just know that I'm told I have to borrow this money.
Why? I'm not clear why you have to borrow. Please help me understand that.
Because because of the way we're taking a hit on free cash. Getting a hit on your free cash, from my understanding, is not the same thing as you transferring money from your reserves to cover expenses. But again, that you've got to talk to an accountant about that. It's just, the treasurer handles your cash. I don't handle your GLs and your expenses and revenues in that capacity. It's just not what a treasurer does.
Okay. Thank you.
George?
I think the biggest struggle we have right now is getting the project manager who historically has been the town administrator up to speed on the project with a partnership with Clean Water Trust and really understanding what's going on and where we're at. We're at somewhat, we have some leniency as far as time goes in a benefit, because I have until September to do the borrowing technically, because that's your last deadline before you are going to get the hit on free cash. So we have, it's not June, it's not as bad as it sounds, because you're thinking June, probably June 30th. But I already have a borrowing scheduled for May for that first 150, along with the other, because it's all, I'm rolling it all into one, along with like our dump truck, etc. So all that's going to happen in May no matter what. That second $150,000 that I'm referencing, we technically have, I can borrow that money in August. So we do have some time here. It's not as time restrictive as it might seem, assuming that June 30 looming deadline that we're all so used to. So it does give Haley some time to get kind of, into that, but I think that's got to be what basically her top priority project right now. It's not my place to tell that, but I've sent the list of requests, requirements from bond counsel, and I know that she's working on it.
Right. So, hi Haley, hi Rita. So we're talking about this this
Clean Water Trust,
PFAS loan.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a couple things that need to get clarified from Clean Water Trust. One is the status of our second award, and just clarification on whether whether they've actually awarded that. Right. That's an open question. We're not sure we have confirmation that second $150,000 loan, interest-free loan, whether that's been awarded or not. So that's one thing that needs to get clarified. And then the second thing is about kind of what needs to happen in order for us to be able to draw down the funds that they have awarded, right? Because we haven't received any of it yet, and they potentially are waiting on something from us before they actually cut us a check, but we're not entirely sure of that. And Ryan, that's
Sorry.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, this is Rita, that I believe that they needed the invoices in order to pay that first $150,000. So it's a reimbursable that they are going to reimburse us. We've spent all that money, but we needed to show them what it was spent on.
Right. Okay. So we potentially have to compile all of the invoices that we've been paying for this work and submit that to them for reimbursement. Is that your understanding?
I believe that,
Yeah,
the first 150 was done. Right?
yeah. Gabe, before she left, did the first 150.
Oh, she did. Okay.
So they have all that. They're just processing it now.
I see. Okay,
Oh.
got it. All right. So that.
Did they give
so,
you any insight as to how soon? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No, please go ahead, Ryan.
But where you said they're processing that, did they give any insight as to how soon they think they'd accomplish that?
No.
No.
But I did have a good meeting with Jeffrey, so that was last week. So by the end of the week, I can follow up with him again.
But that's Jeffrey Arps, right?
Yeah, but he was the one who informed me that they were processing it. I still have that contact that we figured out today, Susie, that I need to reach out to. So I've got a couple people to work on.
Okay.
And Jeffrey Arps is with Tigan Bond, is that right?
Yeah.
And so they are part of processing the invoices so that the Clean Water Act money can be awarded. Is that what we're saying?
As far as I understand it.
So they give us the invoices. We're paying the invoices
From
the
Tigan
invoices are
Bond?
From Tigan Bond, right? So it's then our responsibility to submit those invoices for reimbursement, and it wasn't done. So that's what Gabe sort of was, having to go back and go through all those, invoices now from like 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I can't remember when this all started, but yeah.
Okay.
And since then, as you guys have been talking about, and Ryan has been saying, we've incurred additional expenses above and beyond that 150. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
if I understood you correctly, Ryan, we're at 210. Right? That's the amount that
That's
we've.
that's what I was told from the accountant.
Okay. So the package that Gabe has submitted covers whatever invoicing up to the initial $150,000, it sounds like.
Yes. Yep.
Got it. Okay. All right. So I think the question for us, and George, I see your hand up, is still like, I mean, are we supposed to proceed on the assumption that Ryan is going to pursue these kind of 1-year bans for in the amount of $300,000? Is that it sounds like that's the message that the Gale has communicated to Ryan. Is everybody in agreement that that's the sort of so we're not really, yeah. George, want to go ahead?
Town meeting authorized me to borrow the 150,000. So I'm
The
borrowing the
initial.
150,000.
Right.
No one else has a say in that matter.
Right.
You know, town
Right.
meeting told me to
Right.
borrow it. I'm borrowing
Right.
it in May. So the town finance committee has to budget around
Yeah.
7329 for the interest of it.
For interest
It's
expense on it. The question then becomes,
I'm
what
hoping
about
that
the second?
we get some confirmation on the second 150. I'm requesting that you budget for now because we're getting close to your budgeting deadline. You know,
Yeah.
worst case scenario, you over
Yeah.
budget $7,300. I know it's a tough.
Right.
I work in
Yeah.
small towns. I know it's a tough year. I live in Orange. It's a
Mhm.
tough year financially, but if we get approval from them to borrow it, the likelihood of us getting that money from them before, you know, that August deadline comes around is low, and we don't want to
Mhm.
be on that getting that full $150,000 hit on our free cash versus just budgeting $7,300 in interest.
And your thought is that we couldn't, so the difference between 210 and 150 that you already confirmed are going to be borrowing, so that's $60,000. You don't think, I know you said it's really a question for the accountant, but your understanding is that we couldn't simply fill that gap with a transfer from our cash reserves that we bring forth to our town meeting next month. That's not going to be.
Well, I don't see why you couldn't, if at town meeting, if you wanted to put an article on there that says, you know, your free cash was certified or your stabilization funds, you wanted to get,
Mhm.
say you wanted to put a motion on there, transfer $150,000 out of stabilization, you succeed and get your 2/3 vote. There's no reason why we couldn't use that 150 and then not borrow for the second, because you've now covered it. It's
All
paid
right.
for.
Okay. So I misunderstood something. I thought earlier the idea was that was not going to be
Yeah.
possible.
At the
So
moment,
George,
that first 150 has just been voted to borrow. No one's
Yeah,
voted
that-
to pay it off from like stabilization or something like
Yeah.
that.
yeah. So George,
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm starting to get this now. So yeah. So our decision is really about, I mean, we know we're going to be, we're going to have 7,300 and some odd dollar interest expense on the 150 that you're taking out next week or whatever the timing was of that. And so that's a known, and we're going to have to budget for that. There's no options available to us around that. The question becomes, do we budget for an additional interest expense on the assumption that you're going to be going out for another $150,000 sometime over the summer, basically?
Yeah.
And-
Or the only other option in that would be to try to get your counter to that is that you have town meeting vote and approve another way to pay the
Yeah.
150. You know,
Yeah.
you
Does it
also
have
keep
to
in
be
mind, if you
150?
don't
Yeah.
budget,
Does it have to be $150,000 though, or can it be some?
It
Yes.
has to cover, it has to
Okay.
cover that.
but keep in mind if if your plan is to go to town meeting and you
Yeah.
don't put in your budget to cover this and it fails at town meeting, you're
Yeah.
in it now.
Okay. All right, Bob.
Yeah, I just
Oh,
want to
George.
say, it would be,
No, George.
Oh, sorry, George. Sorry, I saw your hand down, so I thought you were done. George. So, yeah.
It disappeared.
Go
I
ahead.
don't know. It does that to me.
Go ahead, George, and then
Enough,
Bob.
and then somebody spoke.
Mhm.
I'm completely confused, but the first thing I want to ask is, what is the 2000, just for the minutes, what does the 2010 represent?
210,000.
210,000?
It sounded to me like
Oh,
those were
my
expenses that
interpretation
we've
of
already
that is-
incurred.
yes, is the expenses that have been incurred by the town, but there's been no money received and there's been no money borrowed to cover.
So if Haley has a conversation with Clean Water Trust, they have the invoices, there is a very good chance that we're going to get 150,000 back, and that number is going to go to 60,000. That came out of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the 150 we're going to get from them is going to go back into free cash. Is that also correct? Because free cash put the money in the PFAS contamination account, and now that needs to be replenished in free cash, and then we have a loan. So we're still got $60,000 worth of invoices that will presumably be covered by the next 150, which we don't even know if we're going to have access to. So that, to me, you're taking 150. Looks like we're going to need at least 60, and now we're doing more work. So clearly, we're going to need the other 150. Bob, I agree with Bob 100%. In fact, AJ and I talked about this the other day. Why do we borrow if we've got reserves, especially if it's going to be a temporary borrowing? We can use reserves on a temporary basis. And now I'm also thinking maybe we can take those from stabilization. The question would be is if we made a stabilization transfer to the PFAS contamination count for 150,000, could, when the funds come in for the second loan, would those funds be automatically, I confused myself, but could those funds automatically go back into stabilization? So essentially stabilization at the end of the year ends up being the same as the beginning of the year. The only thing that I misspoke on is if you borrow 150 and we get 150 from them, you're going to have to pay off that loan. That's where that's going.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my suggestion, is that we not borrow the second 150 and we use our reserves to cover it.
The only caveat to that, I think, George, is that I think that assumes Haley gets confirmation from Clean Water Trust that that second $150,000 has been
well, that,
awarded to us.
Yes, thank you. The other thing I was going to say when I put my hand up was, we're going to know probably by town meeting what's going on. And if we put something in the budget, we're probably going to have to live with that. But if we have a warrant article, we can withdraw that. Because we're going to have the budget done shortly. As Ryan said, the timing for the budget is much different than everything else. Just something to consider.
Susie?
Wait a minute.
Oh, wait, sorry, Bob. Yeah, that's Susie.
Look, I think what I'd like to know is what the projected expenses are based upon the last 12 months for this coming fiscal year, so that we understand what we're talking about and what kind of money we're going to need to spend in all likelihood. Maybe have a cushion there, but I think just one small correction. I agree with what George said. If we have already expended the $61,000, you're talking $211,000 total, 150 plus 61. Is that right? Then we've already spent it. We already spent that money. So we're just talking about a very, very small gap between the 51 that's in there now and the 61. So I think we should handle it with cash if we can afford it, because we can put the right amount of cash in aside, 150 to cover the loan, cover the interest-free loan. And what if we don't need it? We don't need it. If that amount of money would handle the projected expenses, we don't have to borrow. We don't have to pay interest. If Ryan is concerned about that, we could possibly put it in two articles, one of which is withdrawn at town meeting. One could precede the other in the vote, so that we're safe. For example, if the town, I would not anticipate this, but say they rejected the idea of setting up funding the PFAS account from free cash or from other reserves, we could go ahead and vote on a loan, so that we'd be protected from that kind of contingency. So I don't see why we shouldn't just get better information. If we can get information about what's spent, we know what we have to handle for this coming year, then we'll have a better handle on it.
Just for the record, we don't need any type of warrant article requesting to borrow. We already have town meeting's approval to borrow.
Oh, that's the first 150. You're talking about the second one.
We have two. Yeah, the town meeting has voted 2 borrowings already.
3 actually, 136 too.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Sorry.
So what happens then if we don't borrow it? Is that an option? You said it was. I thought you said it was.
then you get hit on your free cash.
But if we transfer the cash to cover it, then we don't have to borrow, correct?
Can do it out of
Yeah,
cash reserves.
Yes.
Okay, that's okay. I'm clear.
Susie?
Couple of things to clarify. One, Gabe did project the 12 months, and that's where we came up with the
The
50,000.
50.
Yes.
And then these are loans from the Clean Water Trust, or if we have to go to the bank, from the bank for ongoing costs. And the Clean Water Trust offer was two parts, 0 interest and maybe some loan forgiveness. But this is an expense the town is carrying and will carry to meet the PFAS mitigation. So I'm not sure, I haven't got this clear in my head, but this money that the Clean Water Trust, I don't know if you call it, is underwriting the loan. It's not for the principal, it's not for the work. It's for, they will give us a deal only on the interest. And by the time we got up to here, we began to hear other towns are needing PFAS money and loan forgiveness was starting to look weak.
April?
Yeah, I have a question that may not have an answer, but given some of the things that are happening in our federal government, is this federal money that's coming to us or, through the state? Is there any talk about this money being disappeared? And I don't know if anybody knows. Just a thought.
I don't know. I know it's the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust. I don't know where their funding comes from, to be fully transparent with you.
But Susie brought up a good issue. We're still going to have a liability of $300,000. Part of it, which might be forgiven, but don't bank on it, right?
Right, we shouldn't assume it. Okay. So I think we have some clarity, and it sounds like there's a plan in place for Haley to get additional clarity from Clean Water Trust, and I'm encouraged to hear that we have submitted, whatever documentation was needed for that first 150,000. So hopefully we'll have some better information at our next meeting about kind of when we can expect to actually receive that, and confirmation that that second award was actually awarded to us. Okay, so Ryan, I think we'll have to ultimately decide what to do in terms of the FY26 budget, but it sounds like, can you give me the precise number if we are just budgeting for the interest payment on the initial 150K ban? You said that was roughly $7,000. Do you have an exact number on that?
Yeah, it is $7,329.58.
Okay.
Do you
All
want?
right.
Do you have the full interest for FY26 that I've budgeted?
I think you're in that email. I saw it was 14,660. Is that what you have?
Just for those
I
two,
guess
I
it's
was
just twice a
referencing
month.
like
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of debt.
yeah.
All of it's in
Oh,
there,
yes.
Ryan. I checked.
Yeah,
I
all of
got
it's
the
in there.
schedule
Yeah,
from Haley last
sorry, I
week.
understand.
It's all there,
All right.
and I just added 7,330 for the
Nice.
PFAS loan that you are definitely going to be taking.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you very
Okay.
much. I really.
And so we'll
appreciate it.
in the coming, the next couple of weeks, we'll deliberate and decide whether we want to propose a warrant article to transfer stabilization funds, or whether we'll pursue this another 1-year ban, and we'll share that results of that discussion with you.
Yes, please. I would appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for coming. Anything else for
Yeah,
Ryan
of
before we
course.
let him go?
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate, and I do want to be very clear that when I don't have an answer and I'm like, it's the accountant, in no way am I trying to push something off. I want to learn and know as much as I can there's such a distinct difference in what she does and what, well, not she, but in our case, Gail does and what I do.
Yeah.
And often you ask me a question, and I'm like, that is the accountant, but it would be nice to know. So I usually do
Yeah.
follow up with her after and be like, this is their question,
Great.
to educate me so that I just
Uh-huh.
have a better understanding. So, I
Yeah.
appreciate the opportunity to be heard and to come here and chat with you all tonight. So don't ever hesitate to reach out. I know you can't as a
Right.
quorum, but individually, don't be afraid to email me.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. Good
Take care.
night. All right. So I think, is there anything else on PFAS that anybody wants to say before we move on to?
I put it in the
Next step
budget and now
All
our
right, so you-
deficit's 117,620.
Okay. Is that after, that's after making the police department?
Yes,
police
that's both
wages
things.
change?
Yeah, I'm just going to keep
Okay.
tallying them as we
Yeah.
go.
Okay, great. All right. So there were a couple of other lines that where we're potentially seeing changes since our last discussion. So we ought to just talk about those as well. So we've already talked about the police wages line. So Haley, just to fill you in, I had a conversation with the police chief this morning about the budget, and in the course of that discussion, she proposed basically delaying her implementation of a staffing plan that she had talked to us about earlier this year until to FY27. And the fiscal impact of that is that instead of our police wages line in our budget increasing by 34.4%, where it's just going to be increasing by 10% this year. So so the last budget you saw, there's essentially $33,000 in that we're restoring by making that change. So we've already talked about that. We've talked about the PFAS interest expense. George has put that in. Haley, do you want to tell us about this dog officer thing that we hadn't planned for, but you alerted me to this?
Yeah, so what happened is our dog officer, Miss Long, no longer met the certification requirements to be a dog officer. And so that puts us in a position that's not good. We need the dog officer and we need the animal inspector. So Kristen had helped me by reaching out to the FERCog and the sheriff's department and seeing if they could provide a service to the town. And they said yes. So we would be looking to contract with them through the rest of this fiscal year and then also next year, so that we can maintain, a dog officer position for the town.
Got it. Okay. And that cost is that 3,472? Is that the right? No.
So
5,818.
for FY26,
Yeah.
it would be, sorry, I don't have this. I can search through my email for the specific amounts.
George, do you have that handy?
Haley, is it the amount that was on that table that came from FERCog Sheriff's Department?
Yeah, so I think it was about 5,000 for
Yeah, 5,818.
FY26. And then it'd be something like 1,300 for the rest of this fiscal year. I just want to make sure that that's the 2000. I want to make sure I'm using 2000, sorry, fiscal year 26. It's been a long day, and not fiscal year 25. So I just want to double check that.
So how are we covering that expense for this current fiscal year? Do we need like to do a transfer or something, or?
There is
do we have-
enough in the dog officer line, and then I talked with Gail about, some other options.
Okay.
So
we don't need to take any action to cover us for FY25.
no, she's on it. And then we just need to budget for the next year.
Okay, got it. Bob?
Haley, can you just tell me, is this a required service that we are legally required to
Yes.
perform? Okay, fine, thank you.
Okay. All right. So that and George, does your latest budget have that 5,818
Yeah, so
or
yeah, I just want to ask a clarification question about that. What I did was, because it's basically going to be contracted work with one entity, I put it all in one line. I put it in the inspector of animals line because I figured that the scope of that would also include the dog officer. So I set the dog officer to 0, dog officer expenses to 0, and I made the inspector of animals 5,818. If that's the account that the accountant will be able to reimburse them through, then we can leave it that way. If it's not, then we need to reshuffle where we put the money.
Okay.
Not my call, but I think that sounds like the right way to do it.
Yeah. That seems to make sense. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, and that's in there right now. Okay.
Yes.
Got it. All right. So I think the only other line that needs to be updated from our last discussion is the legal expense line, which we had previously budgeted $40,000 for. And Rita, I think the select board is concerned that that's not sufficient, right? And that can you give us a little bit of sort of background on this and just
Sure.
clarify that where you'd like this line to be?
Good question.
Mhm.
So that line covers not only our legal expenses, sort of in day-to-day town management business, but also for any litigation costs. And right now we have, and one of the reasons, why we've been needing more money is that we are kind of in the thick of the solar litigation. And what we had determined was that we were going to be needing, not only we had outside counsel from Mead, Tellerman, and Costa. We have Donna, who is kind of, in second chair. So we have costs associated with that. Where the litigation is going now is we are going to have expenses that I believe we provided for the balance of this fiscal year for experts that have to be paid. And the exact, we haven't gotten the exact amounts, but it was somewhere in the neighborhood of about $20,000. And that was, as I said, anticipated that would come out of this year's. Now, depending upon what happens with the suit, and I can't go into a lot of specifics because it's all done in executive session. But depending upon what happens, whether or not we end up going to trial or not, and we won't, if that happens, that those costs would be hitting us sometime around September. And so it's, we get through this expert phase, and then if we end up going to trial, then it's going to be expensive, and we don't, they can't tell us exactly how much. So, I guess my caution is that no matter what we put in for legal, there's the chance that it's not going to be enough, and we'd have to go to special town meeting.
All right. But for the purpose, given that unknown, your recommendation is that we fund that line at with an additional $10,000. Is that correct? So that $50,000 for FY26. Okay. Does anybody have any follow-up questions or anything need to be clarified on that? Susie.
We had a little discussion about this particular legal cost to the town. And in that January, I don't know when, special town meeting, it was in front of the voters, whether they felt they wanted to fund the legal pursuit, and they passed it. This has gone on, and we're into it for more money. The one strategy is to put it at this level and then bring up a special town meeting where people can vote whether they want to keep funding this legal cost. So that was an alternative strategy that allows the voters to be part of the decision.
And that special town meeting vote would be something that would be contemplated if this $50,000 that we're gonna budget for in FY26 turns out to not be sufficient to cover the costs of our litigation and as well as the other legal expenses. Is that your thinking, Susie? Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it comes to a place where it's a separated
Yeah.
out issue and people can look at it at the town level and the townspeople can vote.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. All right, George.
I was just going to say, Susie, you're suggesting the additional amount, the $10,000, would be presented at a special town meeting for discussion. In other words, not add this amount at this point. And
I thought you were talking about beyond that, but yeah. Mhm.
I feel like
you weren't specific about the dollar amount for that.
I think that's what we're talking about is this, at what point do we feel that it would be good to allow the town to make that choice? Is it at this extra 10,000 for the experts? Is it at the point where it goes to trial and then they're talking a different ballgame? But this isn't just up to us, I think.
Okay, so why wouldn't we could have this conversation at annual town meeting where there's more people, although special town meeting, certainly I think in this situation, a lot of people would show up. And there was another point I wanted to make about that. So we'd have this conversation at annual town meeting. Oh, shoot. There was another point I wanted to make about that. It's a good one. So everybody, I'm going to put my hand back up when I remember.
All right. Kathy?
I'm just curious, has the town ever been in this situation with regard to a legal matter? And what happens if the townspeople didn't want to vote in additional monies to cover legal expenses? Does that force a settlement, or what happens?
Good
Maybe we
question.
don't know
Rita, do you have
because we've never been in that situation before.
Do you have a thought about that, Rita?
Yeah, I mean, we have been proceeding on the on the votes of town meeting, that special town meeting. I think George's suggestion that we have this as part of the discussion at annual town meeting when we have a much bigger turnout would make a whole lot more sense than waiting to see what happens. I mean, we are, the marching orders were, to proceed in defending our bylaw, and nobody said to stop. We could, that could be part of the discussion at annual town meeting. I say the sooner we make that decision, the better. If everybody wants to say, we don't want to spend any more on legal, we're okay with abandoning our position and abandoning this litigation, we can do that. But it really should be town meeting that's saying we're doing that, rather than the select board or finance committee or anybody else. So
can I follow up to Rita here for a second?
Please go ahead, Bob, and then George and
we
April.
were sued by the litigants are suing us, right? They're challenging our bylaws. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So really, we're not in a position to to settle anything. What are we going to do? Say, well, change the bylaw? No. Don't they? How do they have to prove to the court that our bylaw is unconstitutional? We don't even have to be there for us in a way for the court to defend our bylaw. Do we? Is that not?
Well, we have to defend our bylaw. That's what, yeah, that's what the
Did the
attorneys
state
are
certify
doing.
this bylaw? Isn't it reviewed by the state?
It was reviewed by the state, but, since the state reviewed it, then there was the case, the Waltham case, which the name of it escapes me, which brought a whole different perspective on the legality of certain provisions of our bylaw.
Right. So one of our bylaws was tossed after that, right?
Yes, well, I think it was the 2023 edition, but yeah, we have been sued on this bylaw kind of based on this case, which again, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name. It will come to me.
Okay, thank you. It just makes it a little clearer to me. But what we're facing here, that we are defending the bylaw. If we don't defend the bylaw, I don't understand exactly what would happen at that.
Well, then the Pure Sky and Coles would win, and therefore if we don't defend our bylaw, we sort of walk away, then the judge is going to say, fine, they have prevailed and there's no bylaw, and that's what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
George?
Yeah, that was my question. And Kathy and Bob both kicked it off. It's, if we don't fund this, what's the impact of what happens? And I think that's something we all really need to think about.
It's sort of, it opens the door, and then the developers can submit under the special permit process.
So from that perspective, it sounds like pretty much everybody in town is going to support it. All right.
No.
April?
Yeah, just a thought. So I know this is very complicated, but maybe a way to keep it front and center on town meeting floor would be to have this be a warrant article, the $40,000 or $50,000 for legal, and have that coming out of free cash or of some sort. And that would be another way for the townspeople to vote whether or not to continue.
Yeah, I think you're right, April, that if the goal here is to essentially set up an opportunity for the town to consider this issue, hear an update about kind of what it's cost, what it's cost us to date, and a sense of kind of where we are in the process, and essentially asking the town to consider whether we want to proceed, and sort of framing that around a warrant article that is going to essentially transfer funds into that legal line so that they could proceed if that's the decision of the town. I think it would have to be something like that.
And I think what makes it's complicated because there's so much of this is under executive session. So there's huge swaths of it that we can't discuss, but maybe it's time, to take what we can before the town and see where people are at. Yeah. How much have we spent so far? Do we have a total? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's total somewhere. I don't have that number off the top of my head. So.
But that would presumably be one of the pieces of information we would share at town meeting and have people consider, whether they want to direct, the town to proceed or not.
I guess just, one piece of clarification. So the 40, 50 includes other just, legal costs. So I would say, if we were going to do something, if we were going to separate it out, we should have the legal line item in the regular budget, and then
Yeah.
anything above and beyond that is, it's free cash in an article.
Yeah. So that actually was my question. I don't know if it's possible for you to answer this now, but do you have a rough sense of kind of that? Let's say we use that $50,000 figure, and let's like, is there a way that you could roughly apportion that as to sort of how much of it is likely to be spent on this litigation versus all other legal expenses that we have?
Yeah, what do we have this?
We used to do 15,000, and then with the conscom and the other ones, it's changed up to 40,000. So we suggested 20,000 as going back to the base for us.
So we had already talked about in a previous meeting utilizing $20,000 of cash reserves,
Yeah,
for the legal line. And so maybe we increase that to 30. And no, sorry, let me think about this. Yeah, increase that to 30, but present it as a separate warrant article, which would be a $30,000 transfer from free cash to the legal line based on, specifically for the costs of continuing this litigation. And then the town either thumbs up or thumbs down, right? I mean, would that be the way to structure this,
Well,
Susie?
yeah, and leave 20,000 in our regular operating budget for legal.
Exactly.
But
Yes.
I have another part to this discussion, which is that this has gone on for a while. And in the meantime, the state has studied this issue and decided how to push forward energy programs that include solar. And so this is not in a vacuum. This bylaw that was back from the first round is now sort of out of date, given all the things that are happening. And also the solar industry is changing, and the state's emphasis of where the solar should show up is changing. So the presentation would probably have to do contextualizing the issue around solar. And so, I don't know who's going to do that legwork, but it's definitely, the state was really active last year. I think this whole federal funding scare is distracting everybody. But I bet you can call that woman that's the head of the energy in the state, and she could update us to what is the state's view and how they're sort of directing development of net zero and all the other energy words that you say.
George?
Just technicality, just a reminder, anything that we're going to fund the budget with for free cash is going to have a warrant article. So we were already going to have a warrant article for the 20. We're just going to be 30.
Right.
But it is an
Right.
opportunity, I think, for Rita or who can represent this whole lawsuit, talk about this lawsuit, to have that conversation in front of everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Haley?
Rita.
Rita?
I think we can only divulge as much as our attorneys say we can, and what we can do outside of executive session. And obviously, we there is a legal strategy here. What I would say to Susie's point is, yes, the state is, there's a lot of talk around solar and about the incentives and what the state provides. But a lot of those regulations are not going to be effective till sometime in 2026. In the meantime, we have this lawsuit, and the judge is saying, you guys need to move this along. This has been going on, a long time. There have been delays, and we don't have any choice to just, we can walk away and town meeting can say, we want you to walk away. But we just can't, we've been given a deadline and we can't mess around anymore. We can't delay anymore. And yeah, it's another year before the state's coming out with its guidelines.
Susie?
And if it is presented at annual town meeting and its context is that the town could turn down this expenditure and walk away, the the town meeting information would really need to make that clear. You can't have people
Yeah.
think, I just skipped over that part of the agenda. It's got a impact that not just like money there or money not. So the PR for it has to be careful so that people don't after town meeting say, I didn't know that was what the vote was about.
Yeah. No, this is complicated. Like who's the sponsor for this warrant article, right? Is it the FinCom? I'm not sure that we're the right like group. I mean, who's gonna
Right.
yeah. Anyway, George.
I have a real reservation about this, and that is if there are two groups in town on this issue, people who want solar, people who don't. This is an opportunity for people who want solar to stuff the ballot box by all of them showing up and voting this money down. And so that's a concern for me. And also, if we vote down the whole 30, I think 20 of that 30 is not necessarily needed for the solar.
No,
So that is a concern I have about this.
So George, I think what we would do is we would keep $20,000 in the budget, the operating budget, and that represents the budget for all legal expenses other than this litigation. And then the warrant article is a $30,000 transfer from free cash to the legal line for the costs of defending this our position in this litigation.
Right, but we're gonna lose $30,000 needed to balance the budget. And even if the 10 doesn't have to be in the budget anymore, we're gonna lose 20. And it's gonna
I'm
go
not-
to tax levy. So it'll
I'm not
just go to tax levy.
I'm not following that because if that gets voted down, right, then that's not an expense that we would be incurring in FY26, right?
20,000 of it would be because we're adding it to the budget. So we increased that line by 20,000. And now we want to increase by another 10. And we were going to fund that 20,000 with cash. Now we're going to fund it with 30. People who don't like what's going on don't want to pay the 10. They're going to vote down the 30. So the 20 that's in the operating budget will have to come out of taxes. It'll just increase our tax levy.
It always did.
It always did.
But it was always going to be there, right?
Yeah,
we
well,
were saying
that's well, unless somebody makes an amendment to lower the lines. Because, yeah. It's a little tricky. I'm just trying to think about all the traps.
Bob?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think, would it be reasonable to just have a fund for the 30,000 or whatever the amount is that we need to cover for this a special non-recurring expense, hopefully non-recurring expense. So we have set up a fund like we would for buying a lawnmower or doing a paving job or something, and fund it so it's not part of our budget at all, just like an expense that's funded by a transfer from free cash or from stabilization. Would that make sense? Would that make
That's what we've been talking about, though. I'm
you're talking about adding it to
why
the
people are
line,
confused.
adding it to the legal line, saying just create a separate account for this,
Well,
right, it's a
I see what you're saying,
warrant article
Right.
for legal expenses for the solar
right.
An
So
alternative.
cash reserves.
I think your point is right, Bob, that if this were to be approved at town meeting, there would be a new separate line,
Yeah.
litigation solar litigation
Yeah.
expenses,
I
that
don't,
would
just
then be
a
funded.
short remark about what George said about packing the ballot box. I mean, I don't see why any side of any contentious issue should be blamed for showing up and voting one way or the other on anything. So I assume that there are people that are passionate about this issue that will show up whatever side they're on.
Yeah, I hope so. The other thing is, the other alternative is, we could have two warrant articles, 20 and 10. And 10 being specifically additional legal expense to cover, the solar lawsuit in the event that it goes to trial, and the 20 for the increase for all the other litigation that's going on.
Oh, I thought the 20 that we
Yeah.
were gonna do out of cash reserves was for the litigation stuff.
Yeah, it was.
Oh,
And that
okay.
they want to change
Yeah.
it to 30 now.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
what I
Okay.
thought.
I think
Yeah,
you're right.
All right.
I think that's right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think we
Beat this
You
up
beat
there.
I
that
think
one
we
to
have
death.
I think we've got a plan. I think the trick is going to be for us to figure out now how to present this at town meeting, and who's speaking, and how do we promote a good, healthy discussion and debate at town meeting, and what context can be shared and who's sharing that. And like there's a lot of work to figure that out. But I'm not sure we're going to figure
Yeah.
that out tonight. Yeah. Suzie?
Yeah, I just say, who is the sponsor? I'm
Yeah.
not sure that the select board wants to sponsor it.
And it's not the FinCom. It's that
Yeah.
there's a legal cost coming to the town, and the people who are forwarding that are the ones that
Yeah.
need to represent it. And that's what happened at that special town meeting. It wasn't us.
Yeah.
And so we would need to tell planning board,
Planning board is good. It's their law,
and
right?
and
Yeah.
they can get prepared, and we can also ask that we want to know, we want the facts of how much has been spent to date, and where are we in the process. Those questions we can ask them to address, because it's their project that they want funded.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that sounds, yeah. I like that better than than the FinCom sponsoring this warrant article and having to organize that discussion. Okay, got it. All right. George, am I missing anything? Are those all the lines that had changes that we needed to discuss tonight?
No. So so
The tree ward.
Can
First of all-
I give you sharing privileges, and you can
sure.
go ahead and share the
Yeah, let me put
document?
the
Let's
budget up
see.
on my screen, and then
Uh,
I'm going to go right to the top of it and show you, just so everybody's aware of what's going on here. Okay, do you see the budget?
Yep.
So open items, we put in 35,000 for the assessors. Is that enough? We don't know, but maybe it is. That is something that might change. I know that we discovered, right? Well, I guess we all know that the consultants aren't going to work. We're going to have to hire somebody. So
Mhm.
that's what we put in there. Maybe want to leave it, that's fine. But I had it marked as something that's still open. Police chief's contract, still open. And then tree work. Bob, did you ever talk
Yeah,
to?
I did talk to him, but I talked to Dave about that. I pointed out to him that after that I discussed with Tim the history of the highway crew and how they handle a certain tree limb falls and tree falls around town, and that it's in the budget. And Tim informed me that it was taken out of expenses. So Dave said he had become aware of that and knew that, and that he didn't, he should be able to handle the routine tree work that the highway department has done traditionally. In addition to that, we do have a tree warden account, which I think I don't know if we looked at that number and whether it was changed last year. It's going up, what, 89% difference? I don't understand why that would have to be so. I don't see why.
Well, if we think it isn't, that was the question for him.
Yeah, and I
How
don't think
much do we
that,
need
and
to
I don't
budget?
think that Dave would object. Dave is not the tree warden, as far as I know.
Yes, he is.
Is
No,
he
he's
now?
not,
Yeah,
no,
superintendent.
yeah,
The superintendent is the tree warden.
Okay,
that's
so
the
that's
change we
been
made.
folded
Yeah.
into the highway department's budget? Well, there's no reason why that expense, which was extraordinary this year because of some work that was done along Prescott Road, will necessarily have to be repeated. That was because of some dangerous ash trees that were down there that were a hazard.
The ash borer.
Yeah, so that's not a repeatable, that's sort of a one-time event, so.
Doesn't he, so he told us that on an annual basis, twice a year, he has a tree service come to town and clear trees that he identifies as needing removal.
Well,
And you're saying he can cover that in the highway department budget?
I'm saying yes, but that Tim did cover hiring, I think Pete's from, I think it was Pete's Tree Service from Greenfield a couple times a year. That was part of what he handled from his highway department budget. Not, and the tree wardens, I don't know how Steve integrated the two funding sources in his operation, which was only a 1 year extent operation, but you know, fairness to Dave, he didn't understand it either. He didn't know, but I just informed him what I had learned from Tim, and he said he was comfortable with getting the tree warden expense and funding some of the tree work from his highway department budget.
So did you come up with a number that he wants?
He said he was comfortable with what he presented for the highway department. So he didn't tell me about the tree warden line. He didn't mention, I didn't see that this increase was part of our consideration here, but I don't see that as necessary. I did talk to him and he was cool with just keeping things level. So that was my impression.
I think that there's a problem in that when I printed out the form to send to each department, I did not include tree work on their lines. So then the discussion came up because this year they had made that extra request. And
Right.
that's what brought it from, or where's that number? From 4,400 to 8,500. So that was because it was real expenses this year. And because it is confusing to him, I think we just need to know what he thinks the tree expenses. I mean, either we go ahead with the 4,477 like it was last year, or, well, actually, look at that. FY 24 was 8,000.
Well, Susie, just so everybody understands, it was budgeted at 4,477 in the previous year. This account is one of those accounts that is required to roll over when it's not spent. And the previous tree warden wasn't spending anything. So the actual was roughly double.
Right.
I did call Dave today and yesterday to try to get clarification on this point and another point, and he was out working somewhere. I did not answer my call, and I didn't feel like you calling his cell the first time I did call his cell. He was, I think, out of service. So that's something I can do before our next meeting. One other thing I want to mention while we're talking about the highway department is Dave said that he got the grader repaired from his maintenance budget. So I don't know what that does to our article about the 8,600 or the money for the repair of the grader, because he's already getting the grader repaired by Caterpillar. He's not out of Milton, so he's not getting it done from Amherst Welding. He's getting it done from Cat of Milton. So it's already underway. So
we don't have it and we're not using it. I mean, finance committee didn't do anything for that, unless it's in the capital.
we had from capital planning. It was
capital planning.
16,000.
So that's something we have to sort out too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. We can take it off if he's telling us he doesn't need it. If
He said he's getting it done from his budget. So
well, he might want some more put into his maintenance budget because it is an old machine and he's going along with it.
well, I'm just saying he's getting it repaired from his budget right now. So I don't think the article for the repair makes any sense anymore.
Right.
All right. Well, when you talk to him, can you, just kind of
I've got a
confirm
message.
that's it? Yeah.
Well, I think Susie's right. I think we should fund this at level from last year. And so he'll have it and
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
And we
but-
can go to free cash like we did this year, or cash transfer from the FinCom if it goes over again.
Right.
Back
I think
to,
that's a
Goes
good
under,
idea.
it goes to free cash. Although it would have to be rolled over, actually.
but if we go to
Yeah.
4,477, would we all be happy?
I did this math. I didn't need to
Oh,
do
that's
that.
great.
Mhm. Yeah,
I think it would,
yeah,
I think Dave was cool with it, so. But I'll double check that, make sure that he's aware of those numbers and what is projected in our draft budget here.
And next year I'll give him a form that has the tree stuff on his form.
yeah. Okay, great.
Oh, we got a hand up.
All right. Jim.
Yes, well, bear in mind that Nelson Tree has been doing a phenomenal amount of tree removal and tree work all over town on both the three-phase line that runs through most of our town, if not all of our town, from one end to the other, but also single-phase lines all over the place. And this, I think, takes a great burden off of our necessity of Shutesbury paying for tree removal on its own dime, so to speak. I think we could probably get away with spending a lot less on tree work, to the extent that the tree work that the highway department can't do on its own, and they need to hire a boom truck or something like that to complete the job. But I mean, I just can't believe, being on the MLP, we're very conscious of what Nelson Tree is doing, because and they've been doing a phenomenal amount of work up and down all the roads. So I think that takes a little bit of the burden off of us. That's all I'm saying.
So you think 4477, just keep it flat for a year?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would. Yeah.
I think we should do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
All right.
There's, so Haley sent an email to me, and the town accountant is questioning why we're funding this at 2245. The actuals have been much lower. She said this year's actual is going to be probably roughly the same as 24's actual. And so she recommended we change it to 10,000. Now, just for your information, the same exact number is here. So it's funded by it's a revolving account. It's funded by the people who are taking advantage of the program, and we're spending the money to do the work. So I don't even know, it's not that important to me, but the town accountant thought that we should lower it to 10,000.
Good. Let's do it.
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, because we actually are going through the town and improving people and modernizing people's septic system. So over time, it would make sense that the number of houses that require that kind of improvement would go down.
Okay, yeah, all right, that's good. So what do we do? We save $423 on the tree warden line. What's the other thing we did? Oh, what's the other thing we did?
Oh, you know what? There was one that we didn't talk about, the clerk certification.
Oh, yeah.
So Grace sent me an email a week or so ago. She has now been certified. Just kind of came through, I think, in the last couple weeks. And so she's entitled to that $1,000 certification reward or reimbursement. I don't know what to call it, but yeah. And so I think that's an legal obligation we have. I think there's something in our bylaws that requires us to do that. So that's $1,000.
Yep, he wrote it in.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that was already in the budget that I had sent out,
Yep.
as was the dog officer, as we
Dog
talked about
officer,
earlier. Yeah, so those things were in there. And just to be clear for everybody, the legal line is still at 40.
Oh,
Yeah.
let me fix
So I
that.
think we got to change that to 20, right?
Yeah.
Based on our earlier conversation.
Yep.
Beautiful.
And then the other expenditure will be in a warrant article.
Right.
And greater was the one that was on your mind. That's going to be out of the CapEx thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, actually what's bothering me is I'm not we started at 143, we're at 93, and I'm thinking we should be at 101. Did I change something else? Did we? I'll
Let's
have to
see.
figure that out. But
Okay.
right now it says we're at 93 because I was just doing a reconciliation as we go.
The PFAS is in there. Okay.
The PFAS loan, we added the tree warden. The tree wardens, I'm going the wrong way.
Yeah.
You have the, under the
Yeah.
dog officer?
The dog officer was already
That was
in.
already in
It's in the
there.
Okay, that was
143
in.
at the top. All right, I'm off 390. Okay,
Yeah.
fine with that. I'll figure that out
Yeah.
some other day.
Okay.
I might have some. Well, actually, let me just look at just make sure I typed in my numbers right. 70. So there it is, 7330. Yeah, 7330. Okay, got it. This is why I do it. Okay, so the other thing that, so in answer to your question, there is one other thing we need to talk about. Good. $10. Okay, I'll go back and fix that. Over here, we got to change the legal line to 30.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this police line.
Yep.
Did we put the police in here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's down there,
So,
just under
so the
people.
34. So I think you got to just take that out altogether.
Right.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, done. So now our deficit is 117,587.
Okay. Boy, I like that number a lot better than where we
Yeah.
were a couple of meetings ago. All right. All right,
34.
George.
Wasn't
can
it
you-
34, George?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And then the legal funding. Oh, this is complicated. And then the legal, we added
Not in operating.
in 10,000 in cash. So the deficit, because your revenue is here, and we put it in our revenue number there, so that's affecting the deficit.
Okay.
I know it's so drum roll please. If we go here and we put in 118, because I forget the exact number, average single family tax bill goes up roughly $367. Most 63 of it, of which is for the library building. It's the new debt for the library next year. So basically 300,000 for operating.
I can't.
$300.
And we've covered all of the issues around PFAS, right? All the money, the interest that got in there.
Yeah.
For
That
one
interest
150 loan. And then
and the 50K. Oh wait, no, yeah, that's a separate.
right, that's in the capital.
That's a capital.
expense, right,
thing,
which
yeah,
we should
yeah.
bring up in an update for the grader, but yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll finish this today. I'm actually flying out on Thursday. So I'm going to finish this tomorrow and distribute it to everybody. So you're all going to have an opportunity to look it over, ask questions. I don't know when our next meeting is, but certainly I'm going to try and get this cleaned up. I think this is, as far as presentation goes, it's pretty much done. If we find the police chief salary, and I think we're not going to do anything about the assessors, I think we're in good shape. The only other question I had was, and then I'm going to start the annual report, which is I've actually made some progress on. And now that I have these numbers, I can probably get that done and email that to everybody before our next meeting. When I say get it done, the number stuff, there are some,
right.
There are other things on there that you want to consider, risks and opportunities, upcoming capital. The only other thing I wanted to bring up was when I print this right now in landscape with the notes, it's about 50% this size, which is pretty close to the size of the budget we distributed last year. And I was looking at some other towns' annual budgets, and they don't present nearly as many years as we do. So I'm wondering if, how many years do we really need? And the other thing I would say is, just so everybody knows, if I drop off the first couple years, then I can get a slightly bigger font size. It's going to be easier for people to read at town meeting, but it will spill into a 6-page because the columns will all be a little taller. But you'll have 3 pieces of paper that have the budget front and back.
Well, if we say we want our budget to reflect a 5-year period, that allows us to get rid of FY21, right?
Yeah.
And then
22,
every year moving forward, we just eliminate the oldest column.
yeah, we would have 5 years, and we'd have 3 years of actual numbers, which is pretty
Yeah.
good.
That seems pretty good to me.
Mhm.
Bob?
I just want to say personally, I really like having the years that are on the present presentation. I think it's important for people to see the budgeting over time so they can understand better the trends that are out there. So it may be easier to format or make a presentation to eliminate some of the years, but I think it's a very important aspect to the way we've been presenting the budget. I think it gives people better insight.
All right, how about 5 years? Is that good enough?
Well, I prefer it the way it is, but I think I'm just making the point that I think more is better. And of course, there are limitations to what we can do, but I think it's pretty good the way we do it.
Well, I think the way we've been doing it is every year we add an additional year to this spreadsheet, right? We never take one off.
I think probably we did,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
but we still had all those years on.
5 years sounds good to me.
Well, when I've done research for the committee, I've looked at the town reports, and it's really useful to see these trends and for you to understand what's been happening at the different departments in town, what's been
And
happening with.
you don't think 5 years is enough? I mean, if we just drop to 21.
That sounds good.
I hear you, but I prefer to keep it.
But I think it'd be really valuable for people to be able to read it easier.
Yeah, right.
Or we can buy those glasses for everybody.
Are we going to be outside this year? Are we going to be outside again?
We're
No,
gonna be
we're
outside.
inside.
No, the
No,
warrant
no,
articles
we're
are-
in the. AJ, I need to go.
Yeah.
So anything else? You guys, when are you meeting again? When are we meeting with you?
All right. So let me pull up my schedule. Okay. So we are meeting again on the 29th, so a week from tonight. That is the night that we have to, as a FinCom, finalize the budget and vote on it. And then the schedule that at least that I'm looking at had us attending the select board meeting on May 6th, assuming you're having one on May 6th,
Yes.
where the assumption was that that's when you guys would be voting on warrant articles, and we would be there to kind of represent our votes and answer questions and give a little bit of an overview.
Okay, great. Thank you. So if there's anything else that before May 6th that we wanna weigh in, the 29th is an opportunity.
The 29th would be the meeting to join. Yep.
Okay, sounds good.
And I think the only thing you haven't seen now is the capital plan, which for this year is much less significant than it has been in years past. There aren't the same big proposed projects this year. I think they're all in the like $8,000 to $12,000 range or something like that. So
I think it's just the lawnmower and the
yeah. So
the dam, right? And the dam is
so
cost.
there's
That-
the highway department mower is 11,400. Replacing the town hall fire alarm system is 8,648. Sounds like the grader is coming off based on the information Bob gave. Town hall meeting room repairs, 10,000, and Lake Wyola grant matching funds, $8,000.
Do you have that?
All of those. Yeah, I can.
I've got it right here.
Yeah. So yeah, you can pull that up.
So first thing you're saying is delete this, right? Oops.
I think, should we wait for, Bob to confirm? But it sounds like that's
No, the greater repair is confirmed.
confirmed. We
Yeah,
can take
that's what
that
it
off.
sounded like to me.
Okay. Yeah, so let's take it off.
And then
Um,
illegal goes to 30.
Yeah, I think I changed it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you did. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
while we
And,
were talking earlier. Yeah.
and we got rid of the police
And
department.
I
Cool.
got rid of the police. Yeah.
You're okay with me just deleting the row then?
Yep. Yep. So,
So I want to just confirm. All right, just give me 1 second. I want to confirm that this ties to our budget. While I'm here,
yes. Yeah, we should.
206. Is there something in? Oh yeah, a 156,075 because the 50 of the first one. 156,075. Okay, we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Okay, great. All right, Rita, do you have any questions for us before you head out?
No,
All right.
I'm all set. Thank you. If
All
I
right,
come
thanks
up
for
with
joining.
questions, I'll let you know.
Okay, sounds good.
It's a long night.
Thanks for joining us. All
Yeah,
right.
good night.
Good night.
All right, good night. Okay. So I think we're getting there, guys. What else do we need to talk about tonight? Is there anything else? Oh, I have one update unrelated to the budget. So let me go first to Bob.
Well,
and then
actually,
Susan.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
go
I
ahead.
can't raise my hand because I'm sharing.
Sure.
So if this is where we're at, then we need to probably change at this point the excess levy capacity number.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to basically 117,587. It is now 745. You can see that.
Yeah.
And
So does
now
that,
we're at zero.
now we're
on
balanced?
our-
Yeah. Okay.
Now, one other thing I want to mention to everybody, and then I'll stop talking tonight. One of the things I did, we haven't talked about, was that's our assessed value. What I did was, and maybe I have talked about it, as I increased our assessed value of our properties by the amount that would raise $45,000, so that
Mhm.
this number is a little more accurate. Because in the past we haven't done that. I just want everybody to know that I've done that
Yeah.
in this
Got
model. I think it's really important.
Mhm.
It's kind of a departure from the way Becky did it, but Becky and I used to debate this. Every year we way overestimate by a lot. And I can even show you what the difference is. At 367, if I didn't do this, comes up to 419.
Yeah.
So, but that's not really reality.
Mhm.
So I just want everybody to be aware of it. And this is your last chance, I guess, to object to it.
So is that new growth assumption? Is that what's in our
Yes.
revenue budget?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Yeah, good. Okay.
In fact, when I put this number here like this, 6060877 should be what we have on our tax levy. Sorry about jumping around. $600,878. Okay, yep. So everything's tying out. Okay, I'm done.
Great. All right, sounds good. And maybe, and I think, I can't remember if you emailed this to everybody, but folks should know that there was a new cherry sheet estimate that came out between our last meeting and tonight, and that that helped us by, what was it, like 30,000 or so, George? Was it
47. It's
47?
47. Yeah, so Susie asked this question today in an email to me after I sent this. What we've been working with for the revenue over here was a preliminary cherry sheet that was available back in February, early March, and it didn't have this line right here in it. So what I was using didn't have this. I was using
I see.
7765. But the reality is, but when I looked at the cherry sheet last week, I saw it in there and it's here. So even
Okay.
though the difference between this and this is $33,000, We also picked up the 14,000 because wasn't in the number we had been using.
Got it. Okay. All right. So that was a good development. So
That and the police department were worth a lot.
yeah. Anything else on the budget that folks needed to bring up, Bob?
This is not in the budget, but it's on the capital part of the budget anyway. Dave asked me if he could get the lawnmower before the end of the fiscal year. I said, no, it's got to be voted on before you can buy a lawnmower. Is that accurate?
Well, we voted for it. We approved it at the
No,
capital.
but
planning.
But
the
it's
money
gonna
had-
be in FY
Need
26.
He's
appropriation.
saying before annual town
Yeah,
meeting.
he wants to buy it now. So I said, no, you cannot do that.
He'll have to rent.
Yeah.
This is confirmed.
Yes. That was the right response, Bob. Susie.
And it is important to know that that's just the House Ways and Means draft. They got to go to the Senate, then they got to come in conference, and the more the federal government heats up, the harder it is to make things happen. But in that Ways and Means cherry sheet, the regional school ended up with about 113,000 increase. I did write to our rep to thank him for fighting the big fight, and that really rural aid is another key thing. So there may be some more positive changes. The House Ways and Means isn't set in cement, and I appreciate how hard everybody wrestled with to get this budget under wraps, and I feel happy, and we can represent this to the town. And we still have a lot of little issues out there, whether it's the legal or the police contract, chief contract, there's still stuff percolating.
Yeah. George?
Yeah, a special town meeting is in our future for sure. Yeah, so historically, governor's budget, House budget, Senate budget, and then there's a committee budget, which is basically hash out between the House and the Senate. And historically, we've always gotten more on the cherry sheet than what the House or the governor provides. And so I think we're being conservative by using the House number.
That's good.
And if it comes out higher, I'm just for educational purposes, if it ends up coming out higher than what we use in our budget, the assessors are going to know that. They're going to use that number, and it's going to lower the estimate on the tax. The tax levy will end up being lower, at least to that extent, than what we're showing the town. I don't think it'll be there. We're not talking large numbers, 10, 20, $30,000 more, maybe.
Yeah. All right. Good. Anything else on the budget?
I just want to say that process when we went to the select board and voted per item, it was really awkward. And I don't know how I'll figure out what the hell we did, but don't do that again. It took forever.
Yeah, so I think I agree. And
You
I think
can
we've
remember?
solved that by doing one thing, which is since we're voting
Ahead of time.
next week,
Okay.
we don't have to go through that process during the select board. So the way we did it last year, which I agree was awkward, was we did our internal vote on each warrant article, and then the select board had to do theirs. So we'll have taken care of that.
Great.
Before
Glad
that
you could
is.
remember.
Okay, yeah. All right,
And
I
are we
have
going
one.
to try to have that other meeting with all the departments at some point? That was after the votes. So
Yeah.
after the 6th. Just if the department meeting is still in the hopper, I'd like to keep track of it.
Yeah, I think we probably should, and I think we can maybe just build it into an agenda for one of our, regular FinCom meetings, and whoever wants to come can, and no requirement, but yeah, yeah, I think that's probably a good idea for us to still do that. I have one update, which is that there is a process right now happening that's being kind of spearheaded by Lynn Griesmer of the Amherst Town Council to establish a 4 towns fiscal sustainability task force that is going to be charged with kind of doing a deep study of the sustainability, like the fiscal sustainability issues around the regional school budget. And I think that this group would would collect lots of information and share that with the larger sort of what we think of as the four towns group, that larger group that ultimately kind of makes decisions around the regional school budget. And it would sort of establish a guideline in terms of what the four towns believe is an affordable increase and so on and so forth. And if any town is, or a group of towns is inclined to propose an alternative assessment method, I suppose this group would be the group that could deal with that, but hopefully that won't happen. So anyway, in terms of membership, there's like, we would be represented by a select board member, a finance committee member, and a school committee member, and our town administrator. So we would have, this is a big group, by the way, but we would have 4 Shutesbury people would be participating in that group. So this is going to come before the Amherst Town Council, since it's kind of developed from, I think, Lynn and Kathy Schoen, I think, is supporting her in this. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. But I think that might be a group that we will be working with to kind of tackle some of the school finance issues that we've been struggling with. Susie.
Do you know if Amherst is going to have a different number of representatives? We have 4.
So I'm looking at, I can't, unfortunately, I'm not permitted to share this little draft committee charge thing, but I can tell you in terms of composition, it's 4 select board members / town council president. So that would be 1 for each community. Finance committee members, so that's 4, so 1 for each municipality. School committee members would be 1 for each town. Town administrators / town manager, that's 4. So no, I think they would have the same. Oh, the Amherst finance director is an additional person. So that is probably the 1 additional representative that Amherst would have, that there isn't an equivalent for the other 3 towns. And the school superintendent is a member, and the school finance director is a proposed member. So that's the composition.
And so I just want to be clear for the minutes, AJ, what is the charge? What is the responsibility of this committee?
I think all I can say at this point right now is that I think the committee would essentially be a study group that will develop kind of a fiscal strategy for supporting the regional schools that is sustainable over the next 5 or so years. Yeah. I think that's probably the extent of what I can share right now.
All right, I'm sorry, just for the minutes.
Yeah.
I got distracted. Gather information about school spending to develop
a sustainable fiscal strategy
That's
for
it. Got
the
it.
regional.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Sounds like long-range planning.
Right.
Yes. Anything, Susie? Did that answer your
And
question?
I
Anything
just
else?
wanted to make sure that Haley knew that George takes the minutes, he sends out the draft, and he also sends the draft. Once they're approved, he sends it to the town clerk. So he's the man.
Oh yeah, we had that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Haley figured it out real quick.
Yes.
No
Good.
problem at all.
All right.
Good.
Anything else anybody needs to discuss tonight before we adjourn?
I make a motion to
All right.
adjourn.
I'll second that.
George?
Robert X is in favor.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Great.
All right, have a good night.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, guys.
It's a
Thanks for
long
joining us,
day.
Haley. All right.
Yeah.
You've had a
Thanks,
long
Haley.
day.
Yeah, you have.